bloody tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Oh, g'day everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menas, and it is great to be with you. We are recording this on Wednesday, early morning, or mid-morning, I should say, and I'm joined by Damien Watson. Damien, how are you?
I'm good, Menas. How are you? Sad news overnight with the passing of Dickie Bird. I remember, by the way, when I was a kid, before you had YouTube and things like that, Menas, I'd borrow videos from the library, and one of the regular ones that was in my area, randomly enough, was a video about Dickie Bird. He was that big of a celebrity in England, they actually did a whole program about him and sold it and distributed it around the world. So that, there you go, he was a character.
Oh, absolutely. He had a significant impact on English cricket. So let's start with that. Lots of news to come. England have announced their Ashes squad. We'll update our batting power rankings. But Damien, you're right. Overnight, we lost Dickie Bird at the age of 92. Very sad loss. He umpired in 66 test matches, and he also umpired in 3 World Cup finals, which is, I guess, a real measure of what a great umpire he was and how well respected he was. And if you look on social media, you can see tributes by former players, including Merv Hughes, that have paid tribute to what a great character Dickie was. And, he made an immense contribution to English cricket. He played first-class cricket for Yorkshire and Leicestershire, had a modest first-class career, but then got injured and couldn't play cricket anymore and went into umpiring, and obviously had a long and successful career there, but also was chairman of Yorkshire Cricket Club and was a strong supporter of Yorkshire Cricket Club. And he grew up with Geoffrey Boycott and Michael Parkinson, and so he was good friends with them. And yeah, sad loss. I have fond memories of him umpiring those early Ashes series I used to watch when growing up. And boy, if you were a bowler, he would have been frustrating because he certainly leaned towards the batters and giving not outs. But yeah, sad loss. I saw a lot of tributes online, and he'd been in and around Yorkshire Cricket Club in the last few months. So at least he got to go out watching what he loved.
That's right. He had his own inimitable style, didn't he? He was a character, as you said, Menas. Remember, he used to crouch down and bend the knees every time the bowler came in, and he'd wear his sleeves up. Like, he used to wear the big coat, and he'd pull the sleeves up so it looked like a big T-shirt coat. Like, he was very, very different in that way. You mentioned that Yorkshire accent as well. That was part of his personality too. So he was there for, as you mentioned, some of those Ashes series. He came out to Australia, I think, once right towards the back end of his career. I reckon when Pakistan toured Australia in late 95. I think he umpired that series. I think that was the one time towards the back end where he came out to Australia just before he retired.
And it's a very fine line with umpiring. He was eccentric, but he pulled it off. Whereas I found, in contrast, Billy Bowden from New Zealand quite aggravating as an umpire. I thought he was a little bit of a show pony, went a bit too far with his mannerisms, and was seeking a bit too much attention for himself. But you contrast that with Dickie Bird. He never had those issues. I also am bitter with Billy Bowden, because he gave so many bad decisions in the 2005 Ashes. But I digress. So R.I.P. Dickie Bird.
Absolutely. One of the great characters. And, yeah, rest in peace. His contribution enormous across many facets, as you said, Menas.
And I was just stunned to see he's been retired from umpiring since 1996 at test level, almost 30 years. God, I'm getting old, Damien, if that was 30 years ago. All right, so staying in England, big news overnight. They have announced their Ashes squad. Now, firstly, I recorded a great episode with John Norman from Talk Sport earlier this week where we really went in depth into the English side. So I would definitely go back and listen to that if you haven't. John's fantastic. But overnight, as predicted, England announced their squad, and there weren't too many surprises. Let's start with obviously Ben Stokes is captain. Harry Brook has been made vice captain ahead of Ollie Pope, and Jacob Bethel is the spare batter as expected. But I guess, Damien, that is some indication that Ollie Pope's spot in the side is not 100% secured. So they're probably looking at Brook to be the vice captain and fill-in skipper, also the white ball skipper. And if I'm Ollie Pope, I would be wanting to score some runs in the lead up to the first test to secure your spot.
Yeah, no doubt about that, because he's been under mixed form, hasn't he? And you look at someone like Jacob Bethel, yet to score a first-class century. He's potentially the one that's going to replace him long-term. Will Jacks could be an outside pick as well. It's interesting, isn't it, having a look at who's going to potentially take that spot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they've named Ollie Pope as in the squad, but Brook is vice captain. 6 fast bowlers have been named. So that's England's plan. They're coming here and they've got Archer and Wood here, which is huge, the 2 quickest bowlers in the side. But then they've got Tongue and Matthew Potts, who are pretty quick as well, along with Bryden Carson, Gus Atkinson. So that's a good squad of 6 fast bowlers. I guess the one surprise is they've just picked one frontline spinner. So Shoaib Bashir is coming, as we all knew he would, but they haven't picked Liam Dawson or Rayan Ahmed. They've gone with Will Jacks as kind of a mixed sort of role filler in that squad. And that says to me that the England selectors didn't have faith in Liam Dawson or Rayan Ahmed. They wanted Shoaib Bashir or nobody, basically, in the spin bowling department. And Will Jacks could fill a few roles. He could play instead of Ben Stokes as an all-rounder. If Stokes has to miss a test match, he could play as maybe 6 or 7 who bowls a few overs, and they don't play Bashir. They go for just quick bowlers. So basically, Jacks can sort of plug any holes in that 11. For example, if Bashir gets towed up in the first couple of tests, maybe they move on from him and play, 4 quicks, and Jacks is the all-rounder.
It might be because Jacks is quite a tall fellow, Menners, and as we know, when it comes to height, very, very good for spinners in Australia to have that level of height behind you as well. It's still an interesting selection because he took 6 wickets on debut, and that's going back almost 3 years ago. Then he played another test match, didn't really contribute, and then he slipped out of the plans entirely. So it's interesting how they're going left field in that way, but I suppose it keeps the Australians guessing to a degree.
Yeah, look, I think it more talks about their balance as well, the way they want to set up the side. And I think they just feel that Rayan Ahmed, the leg spinner, or Liam Dawson, the left arm finger spinner, probably just aren't as effective as a tall off spinner. They're really following the sort of Nathan Lyon model of a bowler that bowls with a lot of top spin. And, Will Jacks just could come in somewhere in that lineup if Stokes is injured and bowl 10 or 15 overs a day, just hold up an end to give the quicks a rest. But so Will Jacks is coming, and he also does play aggressively with the bat, so very much in the Bazball mould. And they're the main talking points from the squad. They haven't done anything outrageously exciting, but I guess if you're England, first tick, Wood and Archer are fit, and they're the big question marks coming into this series because they've got that extra pace. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, you look back over the last 12 months, Jofra Archer coming in. We know Cars has had a long-term toe injury. Gus Atkinson had a hamstring injury. So they've been through the wars over the last 12 months, haven't they, England, from a test point of view. So I think it'll be good to see them quite reasonably fit. You want a good contest. You don't want it to be marred by injury. You look back at that 02-03 Ashes series, Menners, when Simon Jones went down on the first day. He was their frontline fast bowler. It did ruin the series to a degree, didn't it? Ruin their morale. So I think you want a good contest between both sides where they're both reasonably fit.
Oh, absolutely. So, Mark Wood and Jofra Archer are very exciting to watch. But I guess, the key issues from that is if you're Ollie Pope, you're probably looking over your shoulder a little bit if you'll still make it in the side. And if you show Bashir, you're thinking, well, all the pressure's on me to perform as the spinner. Otherwise, they're probably going to change tactics and just go with an all-pace attack. All right, so that's the England Ashes squad. Let's turn our attention to the domestic scene. And we haven't spoken in a couple of weeks, Damien, but it has been a hot start to the domestic one-day cup. A number of close games, a number of fight-back games. Notably, this week we saw an excellent victory from Queensland. They were chasing 322 against Tasmania, and at one stage were 5 for 106. And then Hugh Wybgen, in just his second game for Queensland, made 115 not out of 94 deliveries. Jack Wildermuth made 74 off 49, and Michael Neser 41 off 23 to get Queensland home in a thriller. That follows up Tasmania's great victory when they were 8 down against New South Wales. And the tournament's had everything. It's had centuries to Labuschagne, Maxwell, Patterson, Wybgen. It's really been a thrilling start, hasn't it?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. There have been a couple of very good games that have lasted to the end as well, particularly late at night over there in the various states. But it's an interesting one in terms of the positioning matters. I know we've had it started before around this time of year during footy finals, but do you think it gets lost in the wash having it start this early? I understand why they're doing it, because they're trying to fit it somewhere where it doesn't clash with the Shield, doesn't clash with the Big Bash. But it's a bit of a shame that it does get lost in the wash a little bit, because I think maybe aside from Marnus being back in the runs, it hasn't really, unfortunately, been displayed all that much in the mainstream media, whereas unless you're a cricket nuffy like us, a lot of people probably aren't aware of it.
Yeah, I think you're right, but also one thing that will come to the fore is I think when the Sheffield Shield starts, because of the battle for Ashes spots, I think the Shield will get a lot of coverage. So I think we will see domestic cricket get more coverage as soon as the footy finals are over, but you're right, they just dominate. These early days of the domestic season are for real cricket nuffies like us, Dame. I mean, I know you like your AFL as well, but this is the time for the real purists. So I was out at Cricket Central to watch New South Wales smash South Australia last weekend in the domestic cup. Curtis Patterson made 73, so he's started this season in great form. And for New South Wales, Tanveer Sangha took 4 for 35 and Chris Green 4 for 25, and they smashed the defending champions pretty comfortably out at Cricket Central. But afterwards, I spoke to Tanveer Sangha and Brendan Doggett, and I guess the real interesting conversation was the one I had with Doggett, Damien, because with the clouds looming over Pat Cummins' fitness, with that, you would think in a 5-test series, we may need to dive into the next level of fast bowlers, because if Cummins misses a few tests and another player gets a niggle, all of a sudden Boland's playing and the next bowler. So it was interesting speaking to Brendan Doggett, because he was on, he's been included in recent Australian test squads, and he's probably there with Abbott and, he and Abbott and Doggett are probably the two next in line. So I asked him a few things, and one thing he said was that he hasn't been given real instructions about his preparation for the summer. Now, let's counter that with Scott Boland. Scott Boland will have been told to only play a certain amount of Shield games for the Test summer, whether that's 2 games maybe to get ready for the Test summer. Maybe that's 1. Hazelwood and Stark will probably play just 1 Shield game. But Brendan Doggett hasn't been given those clear instructions, which would indicate to me there's still a bit of a battle for that spot below Boland, that selectors won't have locked that in yet, because if they had, they would give instructions to a Doggett or an Abbott and put them on bowling loads. But clearly they're not quite there yet, which means there is that early incentive in the Shield. If you're Doggett or Abbott or Neser, come out and take a stack of wickets, and you could be that player just behind Boland if a player gets injured. So that's my reading of it, that they're still battling for that. And overall, having heard McDonald, clearly if Jai Richardson's fit, they view him as a test-ready bowler, that they believe he will take wickets at test level. But yeah, it just adds more intrigue to the Shield, Damien, with, the bowling spots up for grabs.
And I don't mind that. I think if you had your heart set on certain players, sometimes that wrecks your objectivity before you get to a stage where they have the chance to perform in domestic level matters. So I think throwing it open out there, I get you want to be as planned as possible, but think throwing it open out there for players to perform well in the Shield, I don't see how that can be too harmful.
Yes, and you want to pick players in form as well. So it's no
Correct.
good
Confident.
icing Doggett or somebody and not playing much, and then they come in a bit cold into a test match. So, yeah. All right. So that's some interesting discussion. Ricky Ponting joined SEN Tasmania this week, and he had some takes on the test lineup. He said it's too late to make big changes in the top 6 for Australia, and I do agree with him. I don't think Australia will make big changes. And I think if you've seen Bailey and the selectors, they've been fairly consistent in their run-in to the in test selections. They've been very, very consistent. But Ricky Ponting said that when he was playing, senior players used to move up the order. And he pointed out that someone like Travis Head could move up to 3 as a counter-attacking option, and Steve Smith bats at 4. And then 5 and 6, you could maybe put Green and Webster. But that's a fine idea. But Andrew McDonald said recently it's not going to happen. Smith and Head are movable at 4 and 5. But I guess it's an interesting point, Damien, that should Travis Head and Steve Smith say, you know what, we want that 3 and 4, so Green and Webster can bat 5 and 6. What do you think?
I think that's probably fair. If Travis Head is capable. It's an interesting one because I want to fit Green and Webster in there if possible. And that works at 5 or 6. If Green is bowling and Webster are bowling, I mean, I'd go Smith 3, Head 4. That would be my preferred change. Smith's been so successful at number 3, but I don't mind Ponting's idea. But the point is, McDonald's has said it's not going to happen. But do you think would it be predicated? Is there a capacity to change during the middle of the series? Let's say if Smith runs out of form, Head goes on a bit of a heater. Do you change it round? Well, having said that, if Head's playing well at number 4, well, wouldn't you leave him there? And you just address that number 3 position in isolation.
Yeah, that's right. So that's Ponting's idea. Unfortunately, the brains trust of Australian cricket see it differently. Now on SEN, Gerard Whateley and Barrett Sundaresan, they seem to be pretty firm in the idea that Cameron Green won't bat at number 3 in that first test, and that there'll be a bit of a battle between Green and Webster for the number 6 spot. But I am not so sure. I think there are certain scenarios where that could happen. So if Marnus Labuschagne comes out of the gate in the Shield and tears it up and makes some hundreds, and Sam Constas does well, then I think the selectors actually will look at Khawaja, Constas, and Labuschagne as a top 3. But that's predicated on Marnus making a stack of runs. That's no guarantee. If he doesn't do that and doesn't knock the door down, I can still see a scenario where they stick with Khawaja, Constas, and Green for the beginning of the series with Webster at 6. Because McDonald was very clear when he spoke to Gerard last week that they see the all-rounder as being really vital when you get to that choke point of the last 2 test matches. And we saw that last summer. They persisted with Mitch Marsh until they really needed an all-rounder for that last test match. So I'm not so sure they're going to move Green from 3 yet. It's a possibility, but I'm still on the fence with that one. But, moving Smith and Head up to 3, 4 does solve this problem completely, because then you can have Green and Webster in 5 and 6.
Yeah, agreed. You got 2 rounders there back to back. I think that's handy. And Webster's been in good form as well, Menace.
Exactly. So, look, on that, so as I said, Marnus has to bash the door down to force the selector's hand to put him back in the side. Otherwise, as I said, I can see Green sticking at number 3. Then on Ed Cowan on his podcast, the Grandstand Cricket Podcast. As you know, I ran into Ed a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a message for Ed. That he was saying that, is there any onus on Usman Khawaja to score runs and play Shield cricket in the early season? And I don't think there is. I think Usman Khawaja is locked in, whether I agree or disagree with that point. Khawaja is locked in for those first few test matches. He's probably only going to play 2 Shield matches as a warm-up, and that's it. I just don't think the selectors are looking at Khawaja at all. Do you?
Possibly not, but the things change if he has a very bad start to the Shield summer. Let's say he has a couple of pairs, worst case scenario, Do they look at that and think, well, gee, but the problem is, have they prepared themselves enough for a plan B? I'm not sure if they have.
I don't think they have. I don't think they've got a plan B. I think their plan B is maybe after 3 tests. If he performs badly, you pull the ripcord. But I think you could just lock him in for 3 tests, whether he comes out for Queensland and scores a couple of pairs. And I just don't think he'll play much cricket. I think he'll play maybe, I mean, don't forget last year he had that stoush with Queensland cricket. So he doesn't have many friends inside the building there or vice versa. And therefore,
he just,
well, probably. And then he just might not want to play more than a couple of games. So I think, Ed Cowan, you're dreaming. And just one last thing on the opening combination. I just want to say no to Marnus Labuschagne opening the batting. Looking at this England lineup with Wood and Archer and all these guys, Australia needs somebody at the top of the order who'll play a few shots. Doesn't have to be Ramps in the first over, but you can't send out Marnus and Usman to open the batting. It's just not the right tactic for the Ashes. So I think Khawaja, Constas, firming. And yeah, so Constas, so the Australia AV India A game started yesterday as we record this, and Sam Constas made 49. He was eventually out to Mohammad Siraj, made it off 91 deliveries. That's really good. I mean, he's scoring consistent runs this season. You know, that's 200s, 49. He's in good form. Nathan McSweeney made 74. And friend of the show, and this is the Cricket Unfiltered lucky charm, it's happened before, Jack Edwards top scored with 88 of 78 deliveries. Can happen. Lauren Cheadle on the show made New South Wales captain. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Oh, I'm still waiting for my lucky charm, Menace.
Well,
I'm only joking.
I know you are. All right. Well, that is all the batting race updates. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back with a couple of more bits of news. One concerning bit of news coming out of the US. You are listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menas. I'm with Damien Watson. And good news, the Women's World Cup starts basically, Australia's first game is a week from today. So it's next Wednesday, the 1st of October, Australia kicks off their 50-over World Cup campaign against New Zealand. It's an 8-team round-robin competition. Top 4 go through to the semi-finals. But a sad injury for Australia. Grace Harris has been ruled out of the team after sustaining a calf strain during Australia's fielding innings against India on Saturday. Heather Graham will replace her in the squad. She's going to stay in Australia and play a couple of WNCL games before leaving to head over there, which I think is a good idea because you want to get a bit of cricket into her before heading over to maybe be thrown into the deep end in the World Cup. But that's the one thing that's disappointing about Grace Harris being injured, Damien, is she does add a point of difference. She is one of the most powerful hitters of the ball in women's cricket, and she can be a very effective closer, but we're losing that now.
And also a very calm player as well, really enjoys her cricket. And yeah, as good as Heather Graham is as an all-rounder, she's not a like-for-like replacement for Grace. She's not that power-hitting type. And I think psychologically, this is the important thing. Grace Harris can really instill a psychological blow on the opposition, just with the way she can turn a game, hit multiple sixes, etc. Just be that aggressor. It just takes that mental control as well as the scoring control away from the opposition. So I think it's a massive loss for Australia. Even though she's probably more, I suppose, effective, you can make the argument in the T20 format compared to the one-day format. She is an important player. They've won without her, though. There was a period of time where they weren't picking her, Menace, so I don't think it'll be, when I say it's a bad loss, they've got the depth to colour it, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the Australian team's a bit of a victim of its own success. Like, I'll be watching, but really I'm looking towards that semi-final and final for Australia. That if they don't make the semi-finals, that's such an abject failure from that team that I'll be watching the early games, but it's really you're looking to that semi-final. It could be, well, it will be Alyssa Healy's last 50-over World Cup. She says that. Megan Shoots, possibly Elise Perry's. And it could actually be the end of Alyssa Healy's career. She hasn't said she's retiring, but I would not be surprised if she retires at the end of this World Cup. Maybe she plays the home summer, but she doesn't have long left. She's moving on from cricket. You can tell she's doing a lot more broadcast work. She's been around for a long time. She's explicitly said she's not going to play on for much longer. She won't be at the Olympics, so in 2028. So she could be gone in the next year or two, even sooner. If they win the World Cup, she could decide to go out on top. And again, Elise Perry in the same boat. I mean, Elise Perry's been playing for Australia now for over 15 years. At some point, she might just say, I've had enough. So let's see.
Yeah, interesting one. But I think Perry's still, I don't know, I don't have any insight or anything, but she's still moving around pretty well, and that she's got some time to go. At the end of the day, 2 minutes, if your earning capacity is pretty good, you may as well stay there for a long period of time. But as you said, Healy, on the other hand, wants to go into the media. Very good at it as well as an operator. She's still batting pretty well. She's gone through peaks and troughs, hasn't she, throughout his career? But her career, sorry. But coming into this series, she come in with a pretty good amount of form behind her. So I think, yeah, it'll be interesting whether she finishes off at home during a home summer, whether it's this one or next.
Interesting warm-up game for Australia last weekend. They played India and made 412 batting first, and India replied with 369. So very good batting conditions. Beth Mooney, 138, top score for Australia. I don't read too much into these games, Damien. I've been thinking about it. You always subconsciously or even explicitly, you hold back if it's just before a World Cup. These are glorified warm-up games. I don't discount the performances completely, but I don't read too much into it.
Fair enough. Having said that, there were decent crowds at some of the one-dayers, and shows you that the Indians are really getting behind it. It'll be interesting to see in this World Cup how much we get via crowd numbers, via viewing figures, etc., and whether this could be the real hallmark moment or a real hallmark moment for women's cricket, because, yeah, it would be interesting to see how it's received when it's played over there in the subcontinent.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more bits of news. Dan Brettig for The Age spoke to the owner of the Knight Riders, Venky Mysore. And sometimes in media, and Damien, you will know this, sometimes in media, business or players use the media as a tool of negotiation. And that is exactly what Venky has done here with Dan. He's used Dan to put across some of his negotiation. It's a negotiation tactic. And believe me, if anyone wants to use Cricket Unfiltered as a negotiation tool, get in touch. I will talk to any IPL owner about privatising the Big Bash. But he has said, Venky Mysore, that if they're going to privatise the Big Bash, owners would be looking at a clear window for the Big Bash where all Australian players are available and there was no crossover with the Test summer, and they would want naming rights. They would want to be able to call it the Melbourne Knight Riders or something. Now, if I'm Venky Mysore, I'm going to ask for everything at the beginning and then use this stuff as leverage during the negotiation. This is how you'll get the price down. Cricket Australia are going to ask for $1 billion, and he's going to say, well, I'm not going to give you $1 billion because you played 2 tests. Pat Cummins is not going to play. And so this is how negotiations are done. So I don't think this stuff from Venky means owners from overseas won't buy Big Bash teams because there's test matches played at the beginning of the Big Bash, but they will definitely use it as a negotiation tactic. So that's my reading of it, that article. But it was interesting to get, an owner of the IPL on record. Well done, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this relationship could grow between he and the Australian media minutes. Who knows? Maybe do you think they're eyeing off Australia? Do you think they have bigger, and we'll get to the US in a moment, maybe they have bigger fish to fry, but they eyeing off Australia as potentially somewhere they can move into?
Absolutely, they would. Australia is still, such a production. You look at them as well. If they own teams all around the world, they can, they can be signing players to play in Australia and all their other leagues. And Australia still does produce so many super talented cricketers. But yeah, interesting article from Dan, but I don't read too much into what Venky was saying other than this is putting across a pretty predictable position. All right. Now, you might remember I had Lisa Stalaker on recently and we spoke about USA cricket. Well, overnight, the International Cricket Council has suspended USA cricket's membership with immediate effect following repeated breaches of ICC obligations. Issues cited include failure to establish proper government structure, lack of progress towards recognition by the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and reputational damage to the sport. Despite the suspensions, USA's national teams will still be allowed to compete in ICC events, including preparations for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. To safeguard the players, the ICC will temporarily oversee management of the national teams. Maybe our friend Dan Beswick, who quit the show, will be helping with USA Cricket. Anyway, that's big. USA Cricket gone.
Yeah, I know. And so it's almost like the administrators coming in, Menas, and coming in to run an organisation when they've gone bankrupt. That's sort of the feeling about it, isn't it? But it is disappointing. I don't think, to be in this situation, they're trying to grow the game over there. Maybe it's required, it needs overhaul, but yeah, you just wonder if that's a good sign going forward, Menas. So I hope this can be the catalyst for a bit of change as well.
It's just so frustrating with USA Cricket because they're starting to do good things. Major League Cricket looks good. It's doing well. It's got a footprint. There's investors doing it. The Team USA performed well at the 2020 World Cup, and yet they just can't get their governance structure right. So very frustrating, but we'll keep an eye on developments over in the US. All right, Damien. Well, that is it for this episode of Cricket Unfiltered. We're going to wrap it up with that little bit of news you just can't let go of. I'll start. I was watching the end of the CPL yesterday, the Caribbean Premier League, or Monday maybe, and Kieron Pollard won the CPL for the Trinbago Knight Riders. So Venky Mysore would have been pretty happy that the Knight Riders won for the first time in 5 years in the Caribbean. But they won it in Guyana. And the reporter went up to Pollard afterwards and asked him about the game. And Pollard just bagged the crowd because they were booing him before. So he said, I don't know why you're booing a player who's done so much for the West Indies. So very interesting. I don't think it's the best look if you're Pollard. People can make their own mind up if the booing is good or bad. But if you're Pollard in that moment, you probably just have to take it on the chin. The home team, the home crowd was upset that they lost. Doesn't look good when you come out complaining about the booing. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But I just probably would have let that one go.
Yeah, I think so. Because it just extrapolates, doesn't it, after that? So, yeah, it's an interesting one. But I suppose at least we're talking about talking about some West Indies cricket, Menas. I can't let it go. Well, the WNCL season starts the day of us recording, Menas. So it'll be an interesting season here in Australia. And I wonder who's going to take home the Roof Pretty Cup. Obviously, Tasmania had their period of dominance. Whether they have that again, I'm not sure. But they still have a pretty solid team, even though a couple of players have left. Victoria are looking to obviously regenerate. I think New South Wales could be a chance. Menas, you got a good blend of youth and experience in there. You got Hannah Darlington, who's developed into a good leader. Experienced players like Sarah Coit, Erin Burns, Lauren Cheadle, Sam Bates, and then you got some young players coming through. Annika Leroyd, I think, is one to watch going forward. Menas, very, very good batter, very composed at the crease, and still quite young as well. And I noticed Katie Mack's coming back in, so they've added a bit more experience to the New South Wales lineup. So you guys might be a chance.
Oh, absolutely. And I would think that they would have gained a lot of confidence from being winning the WNCL last year. Went into the final as the underdogs and brought home the biscuits. So maybe they can do it again. And yeah, if you haven't listened, go back and listen to that interview with Lauren Cheadle from just a couple of weeks ago. She was announced as the skipper of the Breakers after that recording. So great to have her on the show. Very insightful chat. All right, Damien, thanks for coming on. I know you've been burning the candle at both ends. SEN track all night, work all day, and you still managed to fit time in for Cricket Unfiltered. So thank you. Where can the listeners contact you?
At Damo_Watts on Twitter, if you like. You can send in a DM and I don't really care who wins the AFL Grand Final, but go the Storm in the NRL this week.
Is it this weekend, the final, or is it the preliminary final?
AFL Grand Finals this weekend, NRL preliminary final.
Right, interesting. Who's in the AFL Grand Final, by the way?
Geelong and Brisbane.
Geelong and Brisbane. Okay, well, who are you going for?
I actually think the Lions could cause a bit of an upset. The Cats are favourites, though, coming in.
Excellent. All right, well, that was our new AFL segment, and you'll never hear it again. Thanks for tuning into Cricket Unfiltered, everybody. As I said, lots of great episodes. Listen to this. Go back and listen to John Norman. We've got great merchandise. Go to the episode notes. Lots of great T-shirts for summer, so you'll look schmick in a Cricket Unfiltered shirt. Thanks so much to Exactamundo for doing that, and we will be back soon.